Hello guys, this is once again Chroma, and I'm recording another live video of 25 NL, a video of live play, so let's begin. We just started, so the tables are kind of filling up, maybe even breaking down somewhere, but that shouldn't be an issue. They should be filling up quite soon anyways. So here we defend King 8 offsuit versus a button min raise, pretty standard. He checks back on a pretty dry board, which is kind of interesting, because a lot of people these days are just automatically c-betting these boards. That makes me think that he probably has some sort of showdown value, so I'm not gonna take a stab here. I have king high, but I probably can't win unless I double barrel, like he's probably got ace high. There you go. Here I'm actually gonna squeeze and hopefully pick up the pot. If not, then I still have a decent hand. Here I'm gonna bet small, just because this is a really dry board, and this way I get bait by weaker hands. Like his calling range will be much wider if I play like that. Here with the nines, this is a pretty bad board for someone just making a cold call and then calling a squeeze, because he's gonna have a lot of pocket pairs and suited connector type hands, not a lot of ace x. The fact that he calls is kind of worrisome. It means it could mean he has a flush draw. It could also mean he flopped a set. I would expect the set to raise quite often actually, but I don't think I can keep betting, because I think a lot of the hands that will fold on the turn already folded on the flop. Here I flop a set. I think raising is just gonna eliminate a lot of hands, so I'm gonna opt to just call. Yeah, that's a little bit dangerous, but I think in the long run it's probably better, because raising here just shows too much strength. He bets and I'm just gonna fold clearly. That's actually not a bad card at all, because it makes my full house, so even if he has a flush draw, I just made my full house to beat him anyways. He checks, so he probably doesn't like the flush draw, so he could probably have like an ace. That's pretty likely. Other options are that he just has like pocket tens and is giving up. If he has an ace, I think betting would probably be best, because I don't want to see another club and make him shut down entirely. I'm debating whether I should bet really small or maybe a little bit larger. I'm gonna go really small to get called by as wide a range as possible. Maybe even the tens will call now. He calls me, and I cannot really bet much, because like the best he could have here probably is like an ace. So I'm gonna size my bet, hoping to get called by ace x, and that will probably be like ace 10 or better. So I think they will call about 575. I think that might be the maximum I can get. And don't be surprised if he folds. Like, if I had ace 10 in his spot, I would be folding. He's thinking long though, so that means this bet is right around what he can afford. So this player is marked as a nit, but he does open the button, so I'm clearly not folding king jack. So the question becomes, do I re-raise or just call? And I think this plays well enough to just call. Pretty good flop. I get 3-bet here and I'm under the gun, so I'm not gonna do anything fancy, just let him have it. Here my standard will be to just bet half pot with a lot of hands, so I'm gonna do that with king jack too. The 10 is not really optimal, because that's one of the hands he would check back. So he calls me. I don't think I can bet very much, so I'm gonna go for a small bet again. I just hope he doesn't raise me, but this guy doesn't seem so aggressive, so I'm not too worried about that. If he does raise me, I just fold. And he happens to hit the 9 on the river. That's unlucky, but note that I actually saved myself money by betting, because if I hadn't, I probably would have checked and called, and it's very likely that he would have bet more than what I did. So I probably saved myself money by betting, even though I got called by a better hand. Yeah, so a really dry board. This is one of the boards that I tend to bet very often against weaker players because they're just not going to be able to defend enough, or they would be able to, but they just don't. So against them, against weaker players at these stakes, I just tend to bet basically anything because I expect him to overfold. He check raises, and clearly that I cannot do much about that. Here I'm actually gonna check back because he's a tight player, a really tight player, and that ace kind of hits his range pretty well. I actually make my two pairs, so that's pretty good. If he starts betting, I'm not gonna raise because I'm not gonna get value from anything worse if I raise. Like I will narrow down his range way too much. I am gonna bet pretty big now though because he could easily have an ace and then he will just call a big bet at least once. And if he has nothing, I could bet smaller, but he's gonna fold anyways. Like even if he has a jack, he might just not believe me and call me at least once. Or he just has nothing and folds. I mean, yeah, you run the risk of making him fold a jack by betting this large, but keep in mind that if you bet half of that, you need to make him call twice as often for that to break even versus your larger bet size. So just because he folds more doesn't mean it's worse to bet more. Here I'm just gonna check back because I basically just have nothing except a really bad backdoor straight draw. And the board isn't that dry that I just want to bet everything. So he checks again, and this time I'm actually gonna take a stab. Because usually when people check twice they just don't have anything, and I could potentially represent a 10. Or even a slow play queen. Here you can 4-bet sometimes if you know this guy's 3-betting a reasonable amount of hands, but I have no information on him, so I'm just gonna fold it. And he did fold to my delayed c-bet. So that's something that works pretty well, delayed c-betting. Most of the times when your opponent check to you on the turn after you check back the flop, they just have nothing and they're gonna be folding a very large percentage of the time when you bet the turn. It's really exploitable, but your opponents, like, you're just exploiting them. Like, you're taking advantage of the fact that you know that they just don't have anything. Pretty good flop here. I'm in position. I'm not gonna raise this. I don't see any reason to. I would rather just preserve my implied odds and reserve the raising for when I actually make my hand. Preferably the 7. That would be the best card. I'm not even talking about the 7 of hearts. When he actually checks, I'm gonna bet large to put a lot of pressure on him. Also because I don't really care if he calls anyways, but I wouldn't mind if he folds. Because that way I just win the pot right there and I don't have to worry about anything. And winning the pot is almost always a very good outcome, unless you have like the complete lock. So here I'm gonna decide to 3-bet. Just because I have a pretty decent hand and this guy's raising on the button. So his range should be pretty wide. If he 4-bets, it's gonna depend on how much he makes it. Same goes for him. Whether I continue against the 4-bet. If he makes a fairly small 4-bet, I'm probably gonna call. But this is clearly the best result. Not gonna open 7-10 offsuit, not even 3-handed. Alright, I open any suited ace from any position, so this is no exception. The only exceptions would be if there are people behind me, a lot of people behind me who make me want to change things, and that will basically mean like really loose players and really 3-bet happy players. Or guys that are really willing to call me in position. And by really call me in position, I don't mean like they call every once in a while, but like call significantly more than average. And there's not a lot of people like that, so usually I just open any suited ace. Not gonna defend this clearly, just too weak. Do wanna make him think that I'm thinking about it though. You don't always want to just insta-fold, because people do react to it. Even if you have a balanced range, it is gonna make them more likely to do stuff against you. Because psychologically they see you insta-fold and they just instantly think, well, he folded, he had nothing, he must be over-bluffing or something like that. Or maybe not even thinking like that, but subconsciously they are going to make an adjustment against it. And here again, same thing basically as the 10-9 against him. Here I'm gonna bet like about half pot, little bit more, and then check call the river if it's blank. Because there's a lot of draws that he could have, and if they miss, I think check calling works well. Because I don't think he has a lot of really strong hands after he checks back the flop. And this 3-bet also gets through. Most players are bummed when someone folds to their 3-bet if they have a really strong hand. But if that's something they do often, like folding often, I wouldn't mind if they folded every single time I had aces, but that they also fold a lot of the time when I don't have a hand that I really like. Because making them fold a lot to 3-bets is very profitable. Like, yes, your aces get hurt a little bit by not being as profitable as they could otherwise be, but your other hands all gain so much in EV that it's just worth it. If I had to choose between people calling my 3-bets like 60% of the time or making them fold like 65% of the time, I would choose folding 65% of the time any day. Because otherwise you're forced to just play a really tight range that really likes getting called, and this way you just add a lot of value against or with a lot of other hands that aren't necessarily as strong. Here I'm gonna check back. I have a lot of showdown value, but cannot really value bet 3 streets anyways. Here I'm gonna check again, because this is gonna be a board that he will check back a lot with hands like ace-jack. And I'm basically just hoping to bluff catch him down. I make a good hand on the river, so I'm gonna bet fairly large. One, because he could still have like a king and just doesn't believe me, or he just doesn't believe me in general, and he actually does call. Like, I've checked the whole way, so he probably thinks I'm pretty weak, and he actually called with jacks. Like, I'm not surprised that he did that. That's why I bet so large. Like, I could bet smaller and hope to get called by something like weak, but here I bet larger and I still got called by something weak. Here I'm gonna fold, by the way, big bet, usually not a bluff. So I could bet smaller and hope to get called by more hands, but I actually bet big and still got called pretty weak. Like, I would say this is a pretty weak hand for an 80% pot bet, or actually maybe a little bit more. But it's just that I checked the whole way, so he just doesn't put me on an ace, he doesn't put me on a flush, and he probably doesn't think I bet a king like this, which is probably true. So he feels like I'm fairly likely to be bluffing there. And that's exactly why I make that raise. I'm not a fan of cold calling in the small blind, but against some min raises I sometimes make exceptions, but not with this hand, I think. No. So this one I'm actually gonna check raise. This is a really dry board, but I do have some backdoor outs. His bet size is gonna change that plan, because this is a really big bet for a flop continuation bet, and that makes me believe he might have something pretty strong. So I'm changing my plan. Here I'm gonna check back. You should be checking back ace high boards a lot in these situations, because both ranges are wide. So you cannot really be betting all the time on these boards and be unexploitable at the same time. So I think you also have to check back some ace-X. And here I'm gonna value bet the turn clearly. Just gonna make a half pot bet. And note that they once again folded when I make a delayed c-bet in position. I'm not gonna put in too much money here, 3 ways, but the flop is really good for me in the sense that it just doesn't hit anyone. I got 3-bet again by this guy. Last time it was on a different table, but it's the same guy. King 10 suited is probably just slightly weaker than I would like it to be. If it were King Jack, I would have called for sure. Now I'm actually just folding, because this guy, I mean, these stakes, I mean, most people just aren't really 3-bet bluffing that much. I hate the word 3-bet bluffing, that's why I hesitated. I think it's more like a semi-bluff, because clearly even 7 deuce has equity when it gets called. So I think the term 3-bet bluff is just wrong. And here I am gonna put in a really small value bet. Hope to get called by like ace king or ace queen. I think 9s or 10s would have bet by now. The only thing I'm worried about is someone hitting that 7 for some reason, but I think that's more than compensated by the fact that I'm gonna get called by ace king or ace queen. So we're 3-way here, a really dry flop. I kinda like c-betting there with my overs and the fact that it's not likely to hit them at all. And I once again get 3-bet, and I once again have to fold. It looks like I'm folding a really large amount of 3-bets, but that's also because I've just been getting the bottom of my range when I'm getting 3-bets so far. So that's kind of unfair. Here he c-bets quite often so far. I'm just gonna check raise this because I do have a flush draw and a backdoor straight as well as an overcard, so plenty of equity. Plus this board doesn't really hit his range that well, so plenty of fold equity too. Probably should have sized up a little bit to like 250 or something like that, but it's minor. And he folds. Same guy here, let's see what he does. He raises and I'm gonna 3-bet for value with my 9s. He might be getting sick of me, so if he does 4-bet, I'm not sure if I'm gonna what I'm gonna do. I'm kind of thinking about just shoving it, because I have been putting a lot of pressure on him, and at some point he's gonna be annoyed and just play back at me with some stupid hand. But he does seem to be pretty disciplined in folding. Multi-way pot brewing. Can I call here? This is a pretty weak player, a really weak player. So yeah, I think I want to call, play pot with him. Here I'm getting 3-1, a little bit more than that. But this hand doesn't play well multi-way, and it could easily be dominated. So I'm just gonna save my money and then get the nut flop. But yeah, you don't know that before you fold or call, so I don't mind. Like I even don't care if they show me ace 9 and ace 8. Like if that happens, that's clearly the bottom of their ranges. This guy clearly shouldn't have ace 9 or ace 8 by cold calling a 3-bet anyways. Like if he has an ace, it should be ace queen, maybe ace jack or better. And this guy, I mean, he could have like weaker suited aces, but that's a minority of his range. Because the 3-bet range usually consists of pretty big cards and pretty big pairs. Oh, and the reason I open smaller than a lot of other people do is because it makes you risk less money when you do get 3-bet. The downside is that you get called more. But I don't mind because I think I have a post-flop edge over most players anyways. Especially in these games, but also in my own games. Yeah, I'm gonna have to fold again. He insta-calls, so this guy might not be a great player. Because this is the 4th hand he's on the table and the 4th one he plays, so that's why I'm saying that. Seems like he might be a really loose player. Let's see if he's playing more tables. Nope, this is the only one. Yeah, pretty sure this is a recreational player. I should have checked that before, because that would have maybe changed my ace-10 play. Because a guy like this is a guy like that is just more likely to be spewing than a better player. 10-7 offsuit in the big blind is, even against almost min raise, I still think it's not strong enough. Out of position, 10-7 off. Like, even against a guy like him who's raising way too many buttons, like he's raising 67% of them so far, and that's 67% out of 24. So that's 18 out of 24, sorry, 16 out of 24. So that sample is reasonable, like that guy is just raising a lot of buttons. But 10-7 offsuit, just too weak for my liking. Yeah, and this guy is really weak too. Just judging by his stats. I'm not sure if you can see them in the video, but he's playing 50-15 over 27 hands. Pretty much impossible for him to be a good player, especially since his stack size is even more of a clue that he's weaker. This guy's probably weak too because of his stack size, his stats so far, but also the fact that he has a 1-star rating of his VIP level, VIP level. There's almost no good players with a 1-star VIP level unless they're new at Poker Stars or they're playing way lower stakes. But at 25 NL you get to 2 stars so fast that it has to be that he doesn't play much. Unless he usually plays 2 NL and just decided to go for 25 for funsies, but like a good player wouldn't do that either. I have to call 37 cents in a 150 pot, which means I'm getting like 4.5 to 1. So I kinda like those odds with a hand like Jack-9 offsuit. It isn't that bad, and this is a fairly decent flop for me. Backdoor flush, open ender to the nuts on almost both sides. Like clearly the 8 isn't the nuts, but it's close enough for me. That's not a really bad card either. Here I'm actually gonna raise because this bet looks weak. He just checked back, so he seems weak. So I think I can take it down if I make a reasonable raise. So I'm gonna make it 195. He might call with like a spade, so I'm probably gonna have to end up betting the river if he calls. If he calls too, that might be an issue. Here I just flop absolutely nothing. So he does fold, and this guy, he could easily just have a flush draw too. So I'm actually gonna shove. Even if he has an ace, it's gonna be really hard for him to call. That being said, I might still get called, but I'm gonna do it anyways. I think it's a plus EV shove. He shouldn't have any really strong hands. If he does, then well played. My read that he was on a flush draw is definitely wrong, because then he would have folded already, but yeah, he still makes the fold. I really like that bluff. I think it's really profitable. Not because he folded, because even if he called I would still think the same. Like his range is extremely capped, or at least it's likely really capped. And I'm representing the flush, which I could easily have. Here I'm going to raise the weak player with my 10s because they're good. And I don't think anyone disagrees with me there. You might think calling is okay with 10s, which it probably would be, but it's probably better to get him to yourself. Like if you call, there might be a few more callers or even someone squeezing, and that would suck. Like this way I just basically get it heads up against him most of the time. Which is what I prefer. I don't want to share the money. It's mine. Yeah dude, just fold. Come on. He's probably got some like 7s or something like that. He insta min raises me back, And here I'm just gonna call. Like, I don't think there's any point in re-raising, because he could easily have aces. Although I'm not that afraid of the aces, because like min raise, min re-raise. But he could still have them, so I don't see any point. And if I'm shoved, then he's likely to fold a lot of weak hands anyways, that I want to keep in. Here I'm actually gonna limp, because this guy seems kind of all over the place and pretty spewy. So if I limp, I can actually call his raise. And if I raise myself and he re-raises, which he's been doing quite often, I have to fold basically. So I think this is a better option. Here I'm gonna fold. This is not a good flop for me. He bets again and I'm folding. Don't really like it because this guy seems goofy, but I don't want to commit my stack with Jack 10 there, and it seems like I might have to if I call. Here I flop a gut shot in a lame spot, so I'm gonna try and take a stab. It's a flop that doesn't really hit anyone except for the flush draw maybe. So, well, that's a very interesting card. So the question is, should I raise? And I think the answer is no, because it's actually not that unlikely that there's a flush out there, so I have to be careful. Right now I'm not just gonna assume there's a flush. Okay, so it's getting more and more annoying, but we do have an open-ended straight flush draw, which is 2 outs. I'm getting 7 to 1, and if I hit it, I'm basically just getting at least one of their stacks, most likely, so I think that's enough to call. Plus my straight might actually still be best. Now I'm pretty sure I'm beat, so I'm just folding. He shoves twice the pot when the board pairs, and there's a flush, so I don't even have close to the nuts. And this suggests the nuts. That doesn't mean it is the nuts, and there you go, it isn't, but this guy had the nut flush, so yeah. It was already suggested he had the nut flush because he min-raised the flop, and I actually should have paid attention to that because that was one of my outs. And I should have known that. Because I was drawing to the 6 and the ace of clubs, and I was fairly sure that he had the ace of clubs. So I should have actually taken that into consideration. This is a limped pot. I'm just gonna check it down hopefully and realize my equity that way. He's not gonna let me, and he's very aggressive so far, but I just have ace high and he could easily have one of those pairs, so I'm not gonna do that. There's way better situations to stand up to him. In fact, you don't really want to stand up to anyone, you just want to play in a way that's most profitable. And if it's most profitable to just keep folding until you get the nuts, then that's what you gotta do. Not saying that's the case here, but you shouldn't make a call just to make a call. Like, just do not fold. So he makes another really weak bet, but this time I actually have a showdown value hand, so I'm not gonna raise that large. I'm just gonna make it a little bit bigger, so he can actually call. That's a really bad card, because his min-donk range definitely includes a 6. So if he does it again, I'm just gonna be calling, and I'm gonna be calling a reasonably sized bet on the river too. If he shoves, I'm folding. He actually checks, and I'm gonna place a small bet, because he probably doesn't have much, and I'm hoping he has king high with a flush draw and just calls me. He actually folds, and I mean, that was to be expected. When he checks, it's likely he's gonna fold. I just tried my best in extracting a little bit more from maybe king high, but maybe he didn't have king high, maybe he just finally figured out he wasn't winning that hand. Alright, let's see if we can get some interesting hands going again. It's always a bummer when nothing happens for a while. But yeah, what can you do? Even if you play Zoom, that's still gonna happen sometimes. Like you'll end up folding for a while. This seems to be interesting. So he raised, he 3-bet, and he 4-bet. Like this guy is a complete lunatic so far. Or at least it looks like he's a complete lunatic. It could be that he's getting great hands, but it would be a really big coincidence. This guy's really nitty, so I'm actually just gonna fold King Jack. Probably would have done that anyways against a better player, but definitely against a really big nit. So he raises again, as mentioned. He raises a lot of hands. He's also very aggressive post flop, so far anyways. But so far it's been working, and they tend to keep doing that as long as it's working. You'll see a lot of these guys, they just bet every single hand and raise and re-raise and whatever until they lose a big pot, and then they completely shut down. But he's actually capable of folding, so it's not like he just raises and re-raises every single hand without discrimination. He did fold to this check raise, so that's something to keep in mind. And he sits out, that's a shame. Because this is one of those guys you really want at your table. He's gonna be dropping a lot of money. Like his stack is basically a matter of time before it's gone. And everybody at the table probably knows it. Except him. The worst thing that could happen right now is that everybody starts sitting out because this guy is sitting out, and then the game stops. And the even worse thing is if this guy keeps playing, or anybody else, and I keep playing, and the other guys get to sit out while he's sitting out. Like I see that all the time at my own stakes, and I think it's really scummy. So this guy has been opening a lot of buttons, and I'm actually gonna 3-bet him with complete garbage, and that's a misclick, and that's gonna ruin it all pretty hard. Still gonna see bet. Hopefully he folds, because I don't want to see him to see my hand. Here I'm gonna bet pretty. I was gonna bet pretty large, but this board is actually really dry, so I'm gonna bet really small and induce calls by a wider range. So when he calls and the turn is kind of like that, I actually want to keep betting. And now I'm actually gonna size up, and that's a really good card to go for a really big bet. Or should I go for a check raise maybe? He is fairly aggressive. Here I'm gonna fold and I don't have to show my hand, that's pretty good. He is pretty aggressive, but I'm still worried he checks back, so I'm actually gonna bet over the pot. Hope he has a king too. He doesn't, that's a shame. So this guy donks out again, but this time he bets over the pot, so I'm not raising. But I'm not ready to fold just yet. I am getting very, very careful though, but I kind of hate his stack. So now he bets small again. So he bets pretty big on the flop, so he probably likes the flop, but he hates this turn. So he either has 2 pair, or maybe he just has an 8. Sorry, a 10. Or another option, he's just trying to extract money, but in any way I cannot fold, and this is one of the reasons. Now I'm gonna get his stack because he thinks that we're splitting and we're not. Oh, he actually hit the turn. That's strange. And yeah, I did get his stack. I thought he would be check calling my all in, but this is fine too. Really dry board, I'm just gonna bet really small. My aces. If he raises, then I would actually like that. Clearly calling here. And folding the river. Yeah, this table's breaking just because this guy busted. Like, everybody was playing because of him. Here I'm gonna fold my 6-4. fold for deuce, even against a nit. Standard open for me, blind versus blind. Only reason I would fold it is if the big blind would be a really big 3-better in that spot. Here I'm gonna bet 1/3 because the board is really dry. He raises, which he's gonna do with a fairly wide range against my bet size, but I just can't do anything about it. It might seem like a lot of people are starting to adjust to the 1/3 fold on the flop. Like a few months ago that was really new and nobody knew how to defend against it. Maybe people are starting to realize that they should be raising that a lot. But it could be coincidence because I'm running fairly bad lately, so it could just be that they just have these hands actually and they're not really exploiting it or battling it well. Reacting to it well, rather, I should say. Easy 3-bet here. He folds instantly. If I knew anything about him, that he's tight, I would definitely open Jack-5 suited, but I have no information. This is a standard open for me, so I'm just gonna do that. This is also reasonably standard for me unless there's a really aggressive player on the button. And he's nitty, so that makes me want to open even more because he's going to be folding his big blind a lot, which is a huge gain. Yeah, I don't know anything about him, so 10-3 suited is not what I want to defend there. Yeah, this guy hasn't been raising a lot of buttons and he's really tight, so I'm actually gonna make a really tight fold there. Usually this would be a standard 3-bet for me, but not against a guy like that. Easy c-bet with my backdoors flush and my straight draw. I think I still bet. No, actually I'm gonna check call with my equity. Because he still has a lot of weaker hands like flush draws, and he's probably gonna give up on the river. That's a bad card though. So those flush draws just hit. I'm gonna call once here. I cannot really represent the flush draw because I checked the flop. No, I'm not gonna do anything fancy. Here I'm just gonna 3-bet for value against someone who opens his small blind, or sorry, yeah, small blind pretty often. Calling once on this board. He checks back, that's interesting. So he checks back the king. That means he probably has showdown value, so he could have a 10 or he could have a jack, most likely, or 9s. But I'm probably losing, so that would make me want to turn this into a bluff. Question is, if he has a 10 he's clearly not folding. If he has a jack he's probably also not folding, so it's not worth it. Yeah, I don't think he would have folded that. That was in the range that I gave him though, like jack, a 10, pocket 9s. Okay, so he makes a really small bet and he just calls, so this guy's probably pretty weak. So I'm actually gonna raise and protect my hand here. And also sort of for value, because this guy is just bonkers, so. Yeah, he was indeed weak, and this guy should be folding too, because he should be weak too. And there you go. You might think, well, don't we want to call if we just have the best hand and let them keep bluffing? But basically, I don't want to give them a cheap card on this board because it's really scary already. I just want to get that pot. And sometimes you'll run into a really strong hand by this guy, but that's a risk you're gonna have to take. Most of the time he's just gonna end up folding. Because he has to be worried about draws too. This guy raises me again. I'm definitely not folding. Just a question of do I want to re-raise or not. That kind of what makes me want to re-raise more. But it's also a fairly strong move for him to cold call a 3-bet. Usually done by hands like ace queen, pocket jacks and stuff like that. So I'm not gonna re-raise anymore. Now I'm definitely not re-raising, and I'm not even calling anymore. Yeah, so here I have the gut shot again and an over, so I'm gonna take a stab. Notice that he did fold after he got 4-bet. Even though his range for calling a 3-bet call should be really strong. Okay, so he calls. He actually folded a lot to c-bets on the flop so far, so it's not a good sign. But this turn is a card that I can easily barrel. Also, he has a very low when to showdown so far. So I am actually gonna keep barreling. Whoops. I don't know why it does that. I clearly typed in 1. But that's gonna ruin my plan, because now, yeah, for 1 he can raise because it looks so weak. And 2, he's just not gonna believe it if I bet the river a reasonable amount. So this is kind of annoying. Now I have to fold. And that really sucks, because I probably would have won that hand by barreling. Unless a 6 or a 7 or whatever shows up that changes the board significantly. But I did type in 1, so I'm not sure why it didn't register, or why it didn't really bet 1 instead of a quarter. And this is a good flop for my range, not so much for his. So I expect him to check back quite often here. That's a good turn card for value. That's actually not a bad card. Actually makes my 5 stronger, because if he had a 7 he would have been beating me anyways. So let's see if we can make him call ace high. Booyah! Perfect read. Not that hard though. But yeah, I would bet that's a bet that not a lot of you would make. And sometimes you'll lose to a 7 or an 8. But I think in the long run it's gonna make you more money than it's gonna cost you. So here's gonna be an exception of cold calling in the small blind, because his raise isn't that large. It's a pretty tight player, and I have a really good implied odds against a tight player. So this is gonna be an easy c-bet, and we do actually hit the set. But he checks. Okay, so he basically has nothing. So we're just gonna let him try and maybe take it down at some point. He's not going to, clearly, but I don't see any reason for betting, because he's just gonna end up folding. So this is a really good card, and it's also gonna make it likely that he might take a stab on that king. If he actually has the king, that would be even better. Meh, he doesn't have it, so he just has ace high probably. Oh, he actually had a deuce. Okay, then I missed some value, but I don't mind it. Like, I think in the long run this is just a better way to get value, because he clearly had a really weak hand. So if we're just gonna bet, it's likely we maximum get 1 bet. I think if we just check and he actually bluffs that king, which is a really good card to bluff, we already make a lot more money, because it's way more likely he has nothing than that he has a deuce. especially since he's a really tight player. Looks kind of stupid though if you just check the whole way and just check it down with a set. So he bets this small again, but I cannot keep doing this every single time. I also have absolutely nothing, so this time I'm actually gonna give up. You could argue for calling for the minimum, but I just have absolutely nothing, so I don't want to waste 25 cents. Especially since this guy's behind me and he could easily check raise. Don't expect him to, but he could. So this guy 3-bets a shitload, so I'm actually gonna fold that king 8. I usually would open it, but this guy is a reason not to. This guy is also a reason to start opening bigger, by the way, so I'm actually gonna do that. Because I'm gonna be opening tighter, and if I'm tighter I can afford to raise bigger. So he had pocket 10s and he had an 8. Let's hope to see if we can check it down. I'm probably betting minimum on the river, but not that one. Actually, there's not a lot of cards that I would bet. Yeah, we do get to check it down. That's pretty good. Kind of want to defend or protect my hand here, so actually I'm going to do that. And here I should have raised bigger. I just told you guys I would, and I didn't. And he 3-bets again, which is not surprising. And I'm clearly gonna 4-bet and hope he shoves. He calls, that's fine too. And I hate this fucking board. FML. So the thing is, it would be standard here to check and call, but like, I can already see what's gonna happen if I do that. I check and call this flop, and then he shoves the turn, and I end up folding. So that's not a good plan. So I either need to decide right here, am I gonna call this? If yes, then I need to call the shove on the turn too, or am I just gonna fold? And that's actually a tough decision, because this guy is really erratic, and he is really aggressive. So there's a pretty good chance that he just doesn't have the ace. So I'm really tempted to just go ahead and call it down, but it's also like, do I really want to risk $20 or 80 big blinds on a mediocre hand like this? Here I'm actually gonna call. Crap. Yeah, I'm just gonna save my money. Pretty unlucky though. Like, I finally get myself into a spot where I could potentially bust him, and then we get a really bad flop. Not sure if folding is right there, to be honest. But the one thing I know is wrong is calling that turn bet and then planning on folding the turn, because you're gonna face that turn shove every single time. So if you do call that flop bet, be prepared to call the turn shove on any turn card. I just marked him a regular, if that makes sense. I had him on a leggish regular, but his stats have changed, that he's no longer that leggy. And this guy definitely used to play higher before. I know him from a while ago when I think I was playing 50 at the time. Like 2 years ago, maybe 3? Nah, probably 2. Yeah, so let's make it 3.5 big blinds. Really dry board, but this sort of hits his range better than mine, because he has a lot of pocket pairs in his call range. And here we go again with the min dongs, but I have some showdown value. That's actually a really good card for me. The only thing I'm worried about is an 8 at this point, but he could easily have a hand like this, so I'm not gonna Here I'm actually gonna c-bet because I don't want to check and fold again, but I'm gonna have to right now because once again I just missed the flop against him. It's getting kinda old, but what can you do? Like, he's running really well against me. I probably should be calling him down a little bit looser, but I don't think that's gonna um, add too much EV for me, and it's gonna come at a cost of a really large increase in variance. And at this point, I just choose not to yet. At some point, you're gonna have to if he keeps doing this, though. Like, you just know you're gonna have to call him down lighter at some point because he's just betting every single time you check. This is a board I'm checking with basically my whole range, and I'm gonna be betting really small here. That's a fold, by the way. I could check raise this, but I would want one of these cards to be a spade. He was waiting for me to bet, like he just insta folded. So he just had check fold clicked. That guy defends a lot of big blinds against a small blind, and I don't want to play 7-4 out of position, so rather just fold. Here I'm folding too because this guy has been 3-betting a ton so far, and I prefer it that way. This one I'm gonna cold call because it's playing well out of position, or well, it's playing well in a multi-way pot. It's just a strong hand, and this guy, he could be doing all kinds of stuff, but he could also, that's my agenda, he could also just be having a really strong hand. Sorry about that agenda popping up. So here we go again, and I'm just gonna call again because this looks weak still, and if it is, then a jack or an ace are probably outs. He could raise, and that would suck because then I have to fold, but he actually folds, and that's great because he could still have a really wide range. So I'm just gonna keep calling, even call down with ace high probably if he doesn't bet too much, like $2 max probably, something somewhere around that line. If he bets like 5, I'm folding. Well, 2.5, close enough. Thank you very much. See, and that was my plan, like, just keep calling him down, because this guy's betting every single time, and so far when he's been betting like this, like that small, he's been weak. And again, it's, if you're, like, you know he's gonna keep betting, so if you're gonna plan on folding the river, that's a pretty stupid plan, because he's gonna bet it basically every time. The question is, how much does he bet? If he bet larger, now I'm kind of concerned about him actually having a good hand. But since he kept it way below 50% of the pot, I'm pretty sure he's weak, and I just call him. That being said, I could still lose, like he could still have a 7 or like deuces or whatever, that would be weak too. But he's giving me really good pot odds, so I don't have to win all that often. Okay, I prefer this would be against him, but I'll take it. Let's make it to 65. Here I'm gonna bet small with a really wide range, and he's just gonna fold. So does he. So this 3-bet is annoying because I like this hand and I want to play it against someone who seems to be weaker, but I don't get the chance. Always hate it when it happens, when you have a really playable hand for a good situation and then someone ruins it. But yeah, it's part of poker. It's actually a good play by him clearly. Unless he has like 7 deuce or whatever, but probably not. Here I'm gonna check call because there's a lot of turns that I can actually continue on. He's probably gonna 3-bet me again. There we go. Not folding, that's for sure. So here I'm gonna make a bet, because I have a lot of fold equity on this king. Also because of the fact that he just checked back the flop. Yeah, here I am actually planning on checking and then folding the turn, because this time I'm in position and I have a bit more control. But this works too. Should I bet or should I just try to get the showdown? I think I like going to showdown better and letting him bluff the river. That also prevents me from getting check raised here. So that's what I'm gonna do. And I am gonna call if he bets. He doesn't, so now we get to realize our equity and get the showdown for free. I'm not gonna open this because he's just gonna 3-bet me again, and I'm gonna have to fold if he does, out of position with a weak ace. Here I'm checking back with the intention of just calling down, probably. That might change things because that's not a good card. Here I'm actually gonna cold call, hope he comes along. Play a 3-way pot with a weaker player. He bets small, and that's kinda interesting. Like, this doesn't seem like a right bet, and I actually feel like I can probably make him fold if I raise. I can represent like ace-7 or ace-6 as well. Or just the ace of diamonds, but that would probably not raise. Kinda doesn't make sense to raise here though, from my perspective, so maybe I shouldn't. Feels like he's weak though, but he can probably still beat that 8 or those 8s. So I'm actually gonna fold. I don't think I can represent too much here or enough. So here I'm gonna make a really small value bet, and that serves as a blocker bet as well. Kinda annoyed if I get called by king queen, but so be it. He has an ace, that's fine too. Like, again, if I check, I'm gonna have to call anyways, and if he bets, it's likely gonna be more than 70 cents. Here I'm just betting 1/3. Really dry flop. He has a lot of pocket pairs in his range though, so I might have to barrel again. Not sure if I'm going to, it depends on the turn card. But he actually folds, so that's great. So here I have backdoor straight and backdoor flush draws, and I'm actually gonna check raise this one if he bets. Because I think I will have a lot of fold equity, and I still have some backup actual equity, so that's a combination that I kinda like. Looks really strong though. Like, there's no real draws, so he has to kinda put me on air or 2-pair or better. And he does fold, so that worked. I'm just gonna let him keep bluffing again. This time I actually have a really strong hand, so I'm not too worried about much. If he does bet 4 here, I would be worried, but I'm not sure if I could fold. Probably could actually. But he's not that likely to do it. And there we go. Okay, so this kind of makes me want to fold, because like I said before, so far he's been betting really small and it's been weak every single time, and I've called him down, and he probably knows this, or noticed this. But this time he actually bets really big, so I'm probably looking at a 3 or maybe even 6-5, but a 3 seems very likely actually, so I'm gonna fold. So I just called down with ace high, but actually folded top pair against the same guy. So it all depends on the situation and his bet size and such. And I think I made the right decision in all of them so far. This is one of those dry boards again. Here I'm just gonna be making it 220. yeah, these kinds of boards, they just don't hit very many hands. So you don't have to bet large. Like if he has nothing, he's just gonna fold. Also, by betting small with a hand like this, I get calls by weaker hands. So it's also for value with a hand like this. But with a bluff, it's to minimize your risk too. So it serves a lot of purposes. And here I'm gonna bet half the pot because my hand actually got better a little bit. I just 3-bet this guy and he folded, but I'm gonna 3-bet him again. If he 4-bets, I'm gonna call him. And here I'm gonna check back because I don't think I can get another street of value. Yeah, that's unlucky. Like he just backed into a pair that's slightly better than mine. Probably could have made him fold that, but like I don't know he has that, and the majority of his range is not like a 7. Like he doesn't have a lot of 7s in his range, so there's no point in trying to make him fold that. Because he could easily still have a king. That's actually, or sorry, a jack. That's actually more likely than that he has a 7. Yeah, and I'm kind of, at this point I have a hand strong enough to raise for value, so I'm actually gonna do that also because this board is pretty drawy, and I don't wanna give him a cheap card to a draw. Here I'm just gonna call clearly, and actually gonna keep calling him down. His bet was bigger than it has been so far on the flop, by the way, so I thought he might be stronger than he actually was, but he turned out to be pretty weak again. So he overbets the pot, and I'm actually gonna call down. I'm worried about like ace queen, and now I'm also worried about hearts. So that heart might change. If he overbets again, I'm probably folding. He doesn't overbet, so he doesn't have a flush probably, but he could easily have ace queen. That being said, I'm so far up in my range that I cannot fold. He does have the flush. I think that's weird. Like I don't understand why he wouldn't continue the overbets. Like yes, his range got really strong on that river, but your opponents are not smart enough to realize that, so they will still call you down way more than enough to make up for the increased amount of folds that you get for a bigger bet size. So I check back the flop, and this ace is a good card for me to represent, so I'm gonna try and do that. Hope he folds. If he doesn't, then I just give up. I've been kinda lucky in them folding so far. They've been folding pretty much every time I made a stab like that. And while these stabs have been on situations where they are likely to fold a lot, I feel like I've been running above EV in that situation. Like I've been making them fold more than they're supposed to. Alright, so this has actually been an hour, or actually a little bit more than an hour already, so I think it's time to kinda end the session here. I'm gonna sit out on the big blind for all of these tables, and then call it a day. I think there were some interesting hands, and I think especially against this guy there were a lot of interesting situations. So here I'm gonna make a 3-bet. This will be like a semi-bluff, because I don't really want him to call. But it has good blockers, and you're allowed to 3-bet light sometimes. And by allowed I mean from a balanced perspective. And he actually makes a fold. Like if you only raise the good stuff, people are just gonna fold every single time, and that's not what you want. So he calls the flop. This is a really dry flop in that there's no overcards possible. There's no real draws except the draw that I actually have, so I block his draw. So I don't think I have any fold equity on the turn, so there's no point in betting. Here I'm just gonna fold 3 ways with a call on the flop, so I'm checking back. Wow. Okay, so it's pretty clear that this guy is not a good player. He just called 10 high no draw on that flop, and I actually get to split it. Like I had no info in him except that he has a really weird stack size, so he was probably weaker, but this says it all. Like I'm not even gonna make him light green, I'm gonna make him the dark green, which is reserved for really bad players. and this guy being one of them. So this flop doesn't hit me at all. I also have no draws, no hand, and this flop is a lot better for him, so I just end up check folding this flop a lot, and I also end up checking with a lot of good hands that I'm clearly not gonna fold, but I still want to give up. I'm very tempted to bet here, but I just, like, against weak players I think you can actually bet because they're not gonna realize that you're representing absolutely nothing. But I'm not gonna do it because it would be a bad play technically. This king I could represent. The question is, if I had a king, does he think I would actually bet it? Probably not. That being said, can he call? He can certainly have a king himself, and he could clearly call if he had it. So he bets now, and I'm done. Like, that hand I could not represent anything. It wouldn't have made sense anywhere if I bet. So except for on the flop. But I didn't choose to bet the flop. So then after that, my hands are tied. Nothing left to do but fold. You can't win every single one. Alright, so just this table left. Looks like a couple more hands. Wow, so this guy's really bad, but his opponent actually just stacks off ace high on a king high board. Did they get it in post flop? I think they did. He called king X suited against a 3-bet call, by the way. So he just jams here? Yeah. Like, why would you do that? Why not just bet yourself if you're gonna do this? Because this way you have basically no fold equity. Like, look at this. He just bet 375. Why would he fold to 425 more? Like, if you're gonna do this, just shove. Because then, at least, he has nothing invested yet, and he still has to call a fully pot-sized bet. So clearly you have way more fold equity if you just shove here. Maybe he was waiting for him to fold. That's the only thing I can think of. But still, I really hate that play. Like, you have zero fold equity against a guy like this. Alright, so this is gonna be the last hand. And we're not gonna play it. Even though this guy is so bad that I want to play a lot of hands with him, I don't think we should go as far as opening this under the gun. For all sorts of reasons. Alright guys, hurry up so I can just close it. I'm actually just gonna end it right here.